Alien girl returned the human's lost badge, but her quiet reason was something he never saw coming. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's return to our main character. The corridor shuddered under Ethan Cole's boots as a low-pressure gust rolled through the maintenance level of Arkin 4. The lights flickered, humming with that tired buzz they always gave near shift change. He held his toolbox tight against his side, feeling the metallic chill bleed through his gloves. He muttered something about the ventilation grid acting up again, but his voice was swallowed by the drone of the turbines. Somewhere above him, the station breathed like a giant machine half asleep. A warning panel blinked yellow, another loose seal. Ethan knelt, the steel floor cold even through his uniform pants, and tightened the bolts until the panel clicked home. He wiped his palms on his jacket. Just another small fix no one would notice, except the station stayed a little safer because he touched it. He straightened, ready to clock out, when the gust returned, stronger, ripping the badge right off his chest clip. The thin metal rectangle spun across the walkway and slid into the shadows under a humming conduit. Great, he whispered. That badge was the one thing he needed to access half his job. He crouched, reached an arm into the narrow slot, fingertips brushing dust and cold metal pipes. But the badge was gone, swept deeper by the draft. He exhaled, slow and frustrated. A long night just got longer. He stood and scanned the dim passage. For a heartbeat, he thought he saw someone at the far end. A faint shape, slim, unmoving, the outline catching the blue emergency glow. A soft shimmer, like light glancing off smooth skin. Then the next flicker of the failing lights swallowed her, dissolving the figure into the dim haze of the maintenance sector. Ethan blinked. Hello. His voice echoed and came back empty. Maybe he was just tired. Maybe it was another tech finishing her shift. He shook it off, slung the toolbox over his shoulder, and headed toward the service elevator. The badge could wait until tomorrow. But something in the air lingered, like someone had been there, watching in silence, leaving the faintest trace of cold where the warm lights should have been. The station's intercom crackled overhead, calling closing time. Ethan stepped into the elevator, unaware that deep in the same corridor, a small blue hand was already reaching for the fallen badge, brushing dust from its surface as if it were something delicate, something important, something worth returning. Morning on Arkin 4 felt different in the maintenance wing, quieter than usual, as if the station itself was holding its breath. Ethan Cole stepped off the elevator with a thermal cup of coffee warming his hands, the rising steam softening the sting of recycled air. He scanned his wrist panel out of habit, forgetting for a moment that his badge was gone. The panel blinked red. He sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. He would have to request a temporary pass from operations, which meant paperwork and questions he did not want to answer. He leaned against the railing overlooking the long corridor where he had lost the badge the night before. The lights were stable now, a steady white glow stretching ahead like an empty road. No strange silhouettes, no shimmer of blue skin, just metal and air. He walked the length of the hall slowly, eyes tracing the seams of each vent, each conduit. He crouched again, checking the narrow slot where the badge had vanished, but there was nothing. Only cold metal and the hum of machinery. He stood, sipping the last of his coffee, letting the warmth settle into him. He was about to turn back when soft footsteps tapped behind him, light as if the floor barely felt them. Ethan froze. When he turned, she was already there. A young alien girl, maybe his age or a little younger, stood a few feet away. Her skin was a soft blue with a silver sheen, catching the ceiling lights like frost on glass. Her hands were clasped together, fingers curled around something small. Her eyes, bright and steady, lifted to meet his. Ethan straightened without meaning to. Hey, he said gently, surprised at how quiet his voice came out. She did not answer at first. She just studied him, the way someone might study a reflection they are not sure belongs to them. Then, slowly, she stepped forward and extended her hands. Resting in her palms was his badge. The metal gleamed, cleaner than he remembered, edges polished as if she had taken time to wipe away every trace of dust. Ethan blinked. How did you find this? She hesitated, glancing toward the ventilation grid, then back to him. When she spoke, her voice was soft, almost like wind over glass. It was near the lower conduits. The airflow carried it. I could reach. Each word was careful, chosen, as though she did not speak English often but wanted to get it right. Ethan accepted the badge, his fingers brushing the cool metal. Thank you. Really, I thought it was gone for good. She nodded once, a small, precise motion. Her gaze flicked to his hands, then to the tools at his belt, as if memorizing the details. He slipped the badge back onto his jacket. I am Ethan, he offered. Maintenance. Night shift usually. The alien girl blinked slowly. Lyris, she replied. Her voice dipped slightly, like she was not used to saying her name out loud. The corridor hummed around them, but for a moment it felt still, holding them in a pocket of quiet. Do you work down here? Ethan asked. Not work, she said softly. I watch. I listen. It is calmer here. Her eyes lowered, a faint shimmer passing through them. Ethan sensed something unspoken there, something heavy but gentle, like a memory she kept wrapped in both hands. Before he could ask anything more, Lyris took a half step back. You dropped something important, so I returned it. She paused, as if measuring whether to add the next part. It mattered to you. Then she turned lightly, almost floating across the floor, and slipped into a side passage where the lights dimmed into soft blue shadows, leaving Ethan standing in the quiet hall, badge warm in his hand, wondering how someone who spoke so little could leave so many questions behind. The next evening slipped in quietly, the kind of soft hush Arkin for only had when most of the station forgot this level existed. Ethan Cole walked the lower corridor with his badge clipped securely back in place, though his hand kept brushing it as if checking whether it was still real. He replayed. The moment Lyris appeared, the way she held the badge like something fragile. It stayed with him through his entire shift. A service drone hummed past, carrying replacement filters that rattled faintly in its container. Ethan keyed in the maintenance panel for the west turbine, trying to focus, but every few seconds his eyes drifted toward the side passage where Lyris had vanished. He had worked here for 3 years and never once noticed anyone quietly wandering these restricted corridors. Yet she moved through them like they were familiar paths only she could read. A flicker of movement pulled him from his thoughts. A soft blue glow shimmered near the end of the hall, faint as a breath. Ethan straightened. Lyris, he called gently. The glow stilled. Then she stepped out, her silver blue skin catching the overhead lights in a way that softened the metal around them. She held something close to her chest, wrapped in a thin cloth. Ethan expected another tool he might have dropped or some part she thought he needed. But when she unfolded the cloth, it was a small data slate, older than the ones the station issued. The screen was cracked in one corner, but the device still pulsed with a dim light. She offered it with both hands. Ethan blinked. Is that for me? Lyris lowered her gaze. It belonged to someone from my family. I thought you might know what to do with it. Her voice hesitated on the last part, a careful step over unfamiliar ground. Ethan accepted the slate slowly, as if mirroring the care she showed earlier with his badge. The surface was warm, like it had been held for a long time. Where did you find it? He asked. In the lower vents, she whispered. Before the cycle changed. I have kept it safe. She paused, her eyes flicking to the badge on his jacket. You understand tools. Machines. Memory. Ethan turned the slate over in his hands. It looks like a personal log. Lyris nodded once. It is my sister's. Ethan's breath caught for a moment. Not because of the slate itself, but because she said the word sister with a softness he had not heard from her before. A small tremor of affection woven into the sound. She used to come down here, Lyris added quietly. She said the lower levels felt calm. Like the station. Was breathing slower. Ethan understood that. He had never thought to put it into words. She took a small step closer, her voice lowering. You were kind to her once. The sentence hit him gently, like a door slowly opening. He searched his memory. A child, blue-skinned, caught near a stuck gate months ago. Terrified but silent. He had helped her without thinking, just lifted the panel so she could slip through. He had assumed she was just lost. He had not known she had an older sister hidden somewhere in these shadows. Lyris watched him with a quiet intensity. She remembered you, she said. She told me someone on this station still cared. Ethan felt something turn in his chest. Not heavy, not painful, but real. The corridor hummed softly around them, the station's steady heartbeat. He held the slate with one hand and rested the other on the badge she had returned. "Thank you," he said, "for trusting me with this." Lyris gave a small nod, almost shy. "You returned calm to her once," she murmured. "I wanted to return something to you." Then she stepped back into the gentle blue dimness, leaving Ethan standing with the weight of a memory he had not known he carried. Ethan Cole spent most of the next day turning the small data slate over in his hands whenever he had a quiet moment. The surface still held a faint warmth from Lyris, as if her palms had left behind a trace of her calm. He wanted to open it, to see the memories her sister left behind, but something about the cracked screen made him hesitate. It felt personal, like reading someone's diary without permission. So he waited. When his next shift began, the lower corridor was dim again, lights fading between white and soft blue as the power grid cycled. Ethan walked the familiar path, listening to the steady hum of the turbines, the soft rattle of air vents, the quiet that lived only on this level. He hoped Lyris would appear, though he tried not to show it in his steps. Near the west turbine, he crouched to check the sensor array, the tools clicking softly as he adjusted a loose fitting. When he stood, she was there. Lyris stood at the corner, half in shadow, as though she had been waiting for the exact breath he would look. Up. Her eyes, bright and steady, followed the data slate he held. Ethan approached slowly so he would not startle her. "I did not open it," he said, lifting the slate gently. "I wanted to ask first." Lyris blinked, surprise flickering across her features in a small ripple. "Most would not ask," she whispered. Ethan gave a faint smile. "Most do not wander restricted maintenance halls either." A quiet shimmer of amusement moved through her expression before fading back into something solemn. "You may read it," she said. "It is not forbidden. It is only—" She searched for the word, eyes drifting slightly. "Tender." Ethan nodded. He tapped the edge of the device. The cracked screen glowed softly, a single line appearing in her sister's handwriting. "The station is loud, but the quiet places feel like home." Lyris inhaled, a small breath that barely moved her shoulders. Ethan scrolled slowly, careful not to rush the moment. The entries were simple, small thoughts from someone who explored the lower levels the way a child explores a backyard. She wrote about the humming vents, the warm pipes during daytime cycles, the soft echo of footsteps that reminded her she was not alone. And then, one entry stood out. "A human fixed the gate today. He helped me through." He smiled even though he did not know me. "I think humans can be gentle." Ethan lowered the slate, feeling the words settle in him. Lyris watched him closely, her silver blue skin reflecting the light like quiet water. She remembered that moment, Lyris said softly. She talked about it when she could not sleep. She said kindness here felt rare. Ethan ran a thumb along the cracked corner of the device. "I did not know it meant anything," he admitted. "I just did what anyone should have done." Lyris tilted her head slightly, studying him the way someone studies a new truth. "That is why it mattered," she said. "You did not know, and you still helped." A soft hum rolled through the corridor as the turbines shifted cycles, sending a faint warm draft between them. Lyris stepped closer, her voice quieter. "My sister came here because it felt safe." She said the machines did not judge. And sometimes, her gaze met his, steady and clear. Sometimes humans did not either. Ethan felt the weight of the slate again, but now it felt like something shared instead of something he carried alone. She looked at him for a long moment, as if memorizing the calm around him. Then she whispered, almost like a breath, "Thank you for letting her keep that memory." Ethan Cole sat on the edge of the maintenance platform, the small data slate resting beside him like a quiet heartbeat in the dim light. The lower levels of Arkan, shifted through their evening cycle, lights warming from cold white to a softer gold, as if the station was easing into a sigh. He waited without meaning to wait, listening to the turbines hum, listening to the air corridors breathe. Lyris appeared the way she always did, not suddenly but gently, as if she stepped out of the space between sounds. Her silver blue skin caught the glow from the vents, turning the narrow hallway into something softer than steel. She paused a few steps away, her gaze dropping to the slate. Ethan offered her a small nod. "I read more today," he said quietly. "Your sister wrote a lot about the quiet places down here." Lyris folded her hands in front of her, a gesture that seemed both composed and uncertain. She liked where the air is warm, she said. She liked the rumble of the turbines. She said it felt like the station was telling stories. Ethan smiled at that. She was right. A soft shimmer moved across Lyris's expression. She stepped closer, her voice lowering as though matching the calm of the space. You come here even when you do not have to, she said. Why? Ethan leaned back against the metal railing, feeling the faint vibration of the machinery. It is quiet down here, he answered. Up on the residential decks, it is bright and crowded. Down here, things feel honest. Machines do not pretend to be anything they are not. Lyris studied him with that steady, thoughtful gaze of hers. My sister said you were like that, she murmured. Simple, in the way the turbines are simple. Steady, kind without asking anything. Ethan rubbed a hand over the back of his neck, not sure how to answer that. The hum in the corridor deepened as the airflow shifted, bringing a warm draft that brushed against both of them. Lyris closed her eyes for a moment, letting the warmth touch her. When she opened them again, she looked almost different, not in shape but in presence, as if a layer of distance had thinned. May I show you something? She asked. Ethan nodded gently. Lyris turned and walked toward a narrow side passage that he had always assumed led to an unused storage bay. She paused at the threshold and glanced back to be sure he followed. Ethan stepped beside her. The air here was warmer, carrying the soft scent of coolant and metal that had aged under steady heat. Lyris lifted a hand, pressing her palm to a faint indentation in the wall. A panel slid open with a quiet click, revealing a small alcove lit by a single amber strip of light. Inside was a folded blanket, a tiny string of reflective beads, and a small charm shaped from scrap metal. Lyris's voice lowered to a whisper. My sister used to rest here when she was afraid. It was her quiet place. Ethan's breath caught. The space was barely big enough for a child to curl up in, but the warmth and the soft glow made it feel like a shelter carved out of machinery. Lyris reached out and touched the charm lightly. She listened for footsteps here, she said. She said yours were calm. Ethan stood in the doorway, the weight of her words settling gently into him. Lyris turned to him, eyes soft and steady. I wanted you to see what your kindness gave her. Ian Cole stood in the small alcove for a long moment, letting the gentle amber light settle around him like a breath he had not realized he was holding. The charm, the blanket, the tiny beads that glimmered like captured stars, all of it painted a picture of a child who had found comfort in the warm hum of the lower decks. Lyris remained beside him, her silver-blue skin catching the glow in muted reflections. She traced one bead lightly with her fingertip, the motion slow and careful, as if she feared disturbing the memory that lingered there. Ethan spoke softly, not wanting to break the quiet. She must have felt safe here. Lyris nodded, her chin lowering. She did. Even when our living quarters were too loud for her, too bright, she came here. She hesitated before adding. She said humans did not come to this level often, but when they did not look at her with fear. Ethan absorbed her words in silence. The way she said humans was not sharp or accusing. It was simply observational, like describing the temperature of the air. He stepped a little deeper into the alcove, noticing the small pattern worn into the floor where someone had sat countless times. Did you come here with her? He asked. Lyris shook her head. No, I found this place after. A soft breath escaped her, almost too quiet to hear. I wanted to understand what she saw, what she felt. Ethan glanced at her, noticing the stillness in her posture. She stood like a statue made from soft light, every detail controlled. But her eyes gave her away. They carried something that looked very close to ache. He stepped out of the alcove, giving her room. She followed slowly, letting the panel slide shut behind them with a quiet click. The passageway dimmed as the cycle shifted again. Warm air from the turbines brushed against their faces, carrying the faint scent of coolant and metal warmed by long use. Ethan leaned against the wall, watching Lyris as she folded her hands together again. There is something I have been wanting to ask, she said, her voice almost a whisper. Why did you help her that day? The day of the gate. Ethan blinked, surprised by how steady her gaze was. She was scared, he said. And she was stuck. I was there, and I could help. So I did. Lyris tilted her head slightly, studying him in that quiet, analytical way of hers. Humans always say that, she murmured. That they help because they can. But you did not know her. You did not know why she was alone. You did not know if helping her would cause trouble. Ethan exhaled slowly. I did not need to know all that. Lyris took a small step closer. Most people wait until they understand something fully before they act, she said. But you acted without knowing anything about her. She paused, her eyes dropping to the floor before lifting again. That is very unusual for my people to understand. Ethan nodded. Maybe it is just human nature, he said. If someone needs help, you help. Lyris looked at him, the quiet in her eyes shifting into something more searching. Is it? She whispered. Or is it just you? The corridor lights pulsed softly, as if the station itself held its breath for her question. Ethan felt the weight of it settle on him, gentle but unmistakable. He swallowed, unsure how to answer. Lyris watched him with that still, unwavering gaze, the kind of gaze that saw truth even before it was spoken. My sister believed it was you, she said finally. Not humans. You. She let the words linger between them, quiet and warm, like the hum of the turbines that never stopped breathing. The lower corridor felt warmer that night, as if the station had drawn its breath in and held it somewhere deep in the metal. Ethan Cole walked beside Lyris with a quiet awareness he had not carried before, the kind that made every sound feel sharper, every shift of air feel meaningful. Her last words still echoed in him, soft but steady. My sister believed it was you. They stopped near the main turbine junction, where the floor vibrated faintly beneath their boots. Lyris lifted her gaze to the ceiling panels, listening to something Ethan could not hear. A soft tremor passed through the vibrations underfoot, gentle at first, then rising into a higher hum. Ethan frowned. That cycle is not scheduled, he murmured. Lyris's eyes widened just slightly, a ripple of alertness moving through her posture. What does it mean? Ethan stepped toward the nearest console, brushing dust from the surface and waking the screen. Lines of diagnostics flickered across it, and his breath caught. The airflow pressure was climbing too fast. Not dangerous yet, but climbing. Something is stuck in the upper vent, he said. Or the regulators are lagging again. Lyris watched him closely. Is that harmful? If it gets worse, Ethan said, tapping through readouts. The pressure could slam the gates shut. Hard. Anyone caught between cycles could be sealed out of a safe zone. Lyris absorbed that quietly, her gaze sharpening, not with fear, but with understanding. The hum rose again. A sharper pulse. Ethan felt it through his ribs. He turned to her. I can go up and check it, but it will be tight. The vent corridor is not meant for two. Lyris shook her head before he finished. You should not go alone. I have done it before, Ethan said gently. But if you stay here, you will be safer. Something in her expression shifted, something almost like the beginnings of protest. But she held it in with the same quiet restraint she carried everywhere. Ethan offered her a faint smile meant to reassure. I will be quick, he said. He grabbed the manual override tool from his belt and jogged toward the ladder leading to the upper vents. The hum continued to climb. Lyris followed him to the base of the ladder, stopping just close enough that he could feel her presence, but not her touch. Do not stay long, she said softly. Ethan nodded and climbed. The vent corridor was narrow, only wide enough for one person to crawl through. Warm air washed over him, pushing strands of his hair back. The pressure meters along the walls glowed red at the edges. He pulled himself forward, the metal warm beneath his palms, until he reached the stuck regulator. A thin panel had bent inward, catching the airflow at the wrong angle. He wedged the manual tool beneath it and pushed carefully. The panel resisted, vibrating with the force of the air rushing past it. The pressure gauge ticked higher. Ethan tried again, bracing his shoulder, pushing. The panel snapped free with a metallic pop, and the airflow shifted, settling back toward normal. He exhaled in relief. But before he could retreat, the warning light strobed. The vent gates began their closing cycle. Too fast. Too soon. Ethan twisted around and crawled as fast as the narrow passage allowed, the warm air pushing against him like a steady current. He reached the ladder just as the vent gate began to descend with a soft, ominous whir. His foot slipped on the edge, and for a heartbeat his weight dropped. A hand caught his wrist. Warm. Steady. Lyris. She pulled with surprising strength, guiding him down the last rungs until his boots found the floor. The vent gate sealed behind him with a quiet thud. For a long moment, they stood there in the dim corridor, the hum softening back to normal. Lyris's hand remained on his wrist, her touch light but firm, as if confirming that he was truly there. When she finally released him, her voice was barely above a whisper. "You said it was safer if I stayed," she murmured. "But it was not safer for you." Ethan searched her eyes, seeing worry woven through the usual calm. "I am all right," he said softly. Lyris exhaled, a slow breath that trembled at the edges. "You should not do these things alone," she whispered. "Not when you could be lost in the quiet places too." She looked up at him, silver blue reflections stirring in her eyes. "I do not want that." Ethan Cole could still feel the echo of Lyris's grip long after she let go, a lingering warmth along his wrist that contrasted sharply with the cool recycled air drifting through the lower corridors. The turbine hum had settled, steady again, but the space around them felt different now, as if the station itself understood something had shifted. Lyris stood a pace away, her silver blue skin catching the soft emergency lights, turning each reflection into something delicate. Her breathing was quiet, almost too light to notice, but her eyes held a focus that made Ethan feel as though she was seeing far more than what stood in front of her. "Why do you keep risking yourself?" she asked finally, voice low, careful, as if the question itself was fragile. Ethan rested a hand on the railing, letting the metal vibration ground him. "Because someone has to fix what breaks," he said simply. "That is my job." Lyris's gaze flicked to the sealed vent gate above them. "Your job does not require you to climb into unsafe places," she murmured. Ethan shrugged lightly. "Maybe not. But if I do not, who will?" Lyris stepped closer, the movement soft as shadow. "You talk as if you are the only one who can help," she said, her tone not accusing, just observing. "But you are not the only one who sees what needs to be done." Ethan met her eyes, surprised by the resolve that had settled in them. "You mean you?" he asked. Lyris held his gaze. "I watch this station. I hear the changes in the air, the shifts in the metal. I know its moods." Her hand rose slightly, then hovered, as if unsure whether to touch the railing or him. "My sister knew them too," she continued softly. "She understood the quiet places. And she believed you did as well." Ethan felt something tighten in his chest. "I did not even know she noticed me," he said. Lyris shook her head gently. "She noticed everything. She noticed the way your footsteps slowed when you saw the stuck gate. She noticed how you smiled when you opened it for her, even though you did not have to. She noticed that you did not treat her like something unusual." She paused, letting the silence stretch. "You were a stranger," she said, "but you were kind." Ethan let the words settle into him, warm and heavy. Lyris drew a slow breath, and the air shifted around them, warmer from the turbines, filled with the faint hum that always lived in the walls. "There is something else," she said quietly. "Something I did not tell you." Ethan straightened. "What is it?" Lyris looked toward the sealed vent, her eyes reflecting a soft glimmer of the lights overhead. "My sister did not just come to the quiet places," she whispered. "She came here because she was afraid of the upper levels. Too bright, too loud, too many people who did not understand why she was different." Ethan nodded slowly. "A lot of people struggle with crowded places," he said gently. Lyris shook her head. "For her, the sounds hurt. The lights hurt. The voices felt like pressure." She blinked, a delicate motion. "She was sensitive to things my people are not usually sensitive to." Ethan felt that settle in him with a quiet understanding. "She found comfort down here," he said. "In the calm. In the rhythm." Lyris stepped closer. She found comfort in the idea that someone else understood quiet. Ethan exhaled softly. "I did not know," he murmured. "I wish I had." Lyris lifted her chin, meeting his eyes with something vulnerable beneath the calm. "You helped her once without knowing," she said. "And I have been trying to understand why." Ethan searched for an answer, but the moment hung between them with its own quiet truth. Lyris's voice softened, barely above a whisper. "Humans say you act because it is right," she murmured. "But my sister believed you acted because you saw her." She took one small step closer, her silver blue reflections flickering like starlight on metal. "And I want to know if she was right." The hum of Arkin, for settled into a slow, steady rhythm, the kind that wrapped itself around the quiet corners of the lower decks like a heartbeat. Ethan Cole stood with Lyris in the dim corridor, the soft blue of her skin reflecting the low amber lights as she waited for his answer, her question still hanging between them like a suspended breath. "Was she right?" she had asked. "Did you see her?" Ethan exhaled slowly, letting the weight of the moment settle. I did not understand everything about her, he said gently. But I saw someone who needed space. Someone who needed calm. Someone who needed a moment that did not ask anything of her. Lyris's gaze softened, the reflections shifting like a ripple through still water. That was enough for her, she whispered. Ethan nodded. Sometimes you do not need to know someone fully to care in the small ways that matter. Lyris stepped closer, and the air between them warmed with the nearby turbines, carrying the scent of metal and faint coolant. That is why I returned your badge, she said. Not because it was lost, but because you gave her a moment she carried until the end. Ethan swallowed, feeling the gravity of her words settle deep. I am glad she had that, he said quietly. I am glad she was not alone in the quiet places. Lyris lifted one hand, hesitated, then let her fingers drift close to his badge, but not quite touching. When you dropped this, she murmured, I thought it was strange that something important could slip away so easily. She lowered her eyes. But now I think it happened so I could return something to you. Not just the badge. Ethan studied her, noticing how her shoulders were no longer tense, how her posture held a new steadiness, as if she had finally placed something heavy down. What did you want to return? He asked softly. Lyris met his eyes with a quiet resolve. Understanding, she said. You gave it without knowing. I wanted to give it back. A gentle pulse rolled beneath their feet as the turbines entered a calmer cycle, the warm draft brushing through the corridor like a sigh. Ethan let the silence speak for a moment, listening to the steady hum that had become the background to everything between them. Then he spoke, voice low. I did not help your sister because I saw something extraordinary, he said. I helped her because she deserved gentleness. Everyone does. Lyris blinked, a small shimmer moving through her expression. My people do not always believe that. Maybe they will, Ethan said, if someone shows them. She breathed out slowly, a breath filled with something close to hope. Then I will try, she whispered. She took a small step back, studying him as if committing him to memory. The amber lights reflected in her eyes, softening their usual sharpness. Humans say kindness is simple, she murmured. But it is not. It leaves marks. Ethan nodded. Good ones, I hope. Lyris held his gaze, her voice quiet and sure. Yes, good ones. The station hummed around them, steady and warm. As Lyris turned toward the gentle blue shadows of the passage she always disappeared into. At the threshold, she looked back once, her eyes reflecting the faint glow of the badge on his chest. You saw her, she said softly. And now I see you. Then she stepped into the quiet, leaving the air warmer than before.